Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today, on Boxing Day, I'm delighted to be joined by Liam Carrigan, dialing in all the way from Japan. It is, of course, Liam, match day, but a big Merry Christmas to everybody. Hopefully, everybody's feeling nice and relaxed after a wee day off yesterday of the festive madness. And we're back to business. That's how quickly it happens, Liam. Right into Boxing Day, right into a clash against Motherwell. There's a lot of talk around the predicted lineup and the squad. There's been confirmation in the mainstream media of a squad. There's been the WhatsApp ghost squad. I want to start off with that. We've not really touched on this recently. Somebody's leaking the team. Brendan Rodgers spoke about it fairly recently. It still seems to be happening, mate. What's your thoughts?
It's poor form, whoever's doing it. Because you can only imagine it must be a player. And if they are leaking that stuff to the media, presumably it's because they are being, financially induced to do so. And what footballer is going to do that for what's probably going to be a few £100? It's kind of pathetic if that's the case.
It's pathetic in that we talk about margins all the time, and there's an element of surprise with a Celtic side. So, for example, going into today's game, you're not quite sure about the fitness status of several players. We know that James Forrest is out for 6 weeks, so we'll come back to that in 2025. We don't really know about Nicholas Kuhn. We don't really know about AJ or CCV or Trusty. And these are the names that we've seen in supposed lineups that are doing the rounds. And the thing is, listen, I don't put too much emphasis on gossip when it comes through your WhatsApp, because generally speaking, it is just that. But these teams, they've been getting them right. And this is the frustration. And like you say there, beyond the playing staff, Liam, how many people actually have eyes on the Celtic 11? I mean, who knows? How many people, it's not something the board of directors are going to know. Like the wider football department might have an inkling because they've been working with players in terms of their fitness and all this stuff. But how many people actually know the starting 11? I'm guessing Brendan Rodgers gives the team out the night before the game. That's what I understand. Back in the day, there were stories about, for example, teams getting half an hour before kickoff, an hour before kickoff, and the team's announced. I don't think that's the way we do it. So the information's out there whilst the players are sitting in a hotel room somewhere. Even with the home games, I think they go to a Dakota hotel in Glasgow. And, now and again, you think to yourself, if a youngster's getting a chance, for example, Liam, they might tell their old fella, who might tell their pal doing the boozer, and before you know it, a few people know the team. I get that. That's fine. But this seems a wee bit different, doesn't it? This seems as though it's actually a leak.
Yeah. Like you say, there's a pattern there. This is a consistent thing. It's no just, like you say, you could explain it away as somebody just getting overexcited because they're making their debut or whatever, but that isn't what's happening. It's clearly a concerted, ongoing effort to get that information out before it's supposed to be out. And what would worry me is, like, if we go into a game, say, for example, the derby next week, I don't want them to have any inclination what team we're going to play. No. Because Brendan's got a habit of throwing in a wild card in those games, and I like it like that. I like to keep us unpredictable. One of the main reasons that the last game with them was seemingly so competitive was because they largely nullified our midfield. So I would hope we're going to rejig that a wee bit for the next game.
No, that's exactly right, mate. And I think it does come down to margins. Let's rewind 1 year, 26th of December, 2023, Celtic going into a game against Dundee. We, of course, covered the game here on A Celtic State of Mind, as we always do. And I'm going to give you a wee inkling into some of the plans that we have for 2025, moving on into a new era at A Celtic State of Mind. And I'm pretty sure everybody will be really chuffed with them as well, Liam. Pulling everything together to move forward. Now, going into that game, 26th of December, 2023, albeit we had beaten Livingston 2-0 in the previous game 3 days before. However, this was on the back of those two defeats, the back-to-back defeats to Kilmarnock, 2-1 away, and then to Hearts, 2-0 at Celtic Park. And the mood in the camp could not be more different to what it is now, Liam. I mean, when we have discussions and debates and all that at the moment on Acsom, it's who's the best player in a certain position. It's not because we're tearing our hair out because there's a lack of drive or cohesion within the Celtic side. Remember the feeling after that 2-0 game at home against Hearts. For the first time that season, and for the first time in 2.5 seasons, thought to myself, we're not winning this league. There seemed to be something lacking, and it was tough to put your finger on it, wasn't it? And what a turnaround since then. What a turnaround in the last 12 months.
I remember the Tuesday show after that, we talked about it, and I said, look, questions had to be asked of the manager. And I look stupid saying that now, but the thing is, I stand by the comments because at the time it was valid. Something was not right with how the team was being managed, because we knew it was better players than the results they were producing.
Yeah.
So whatever it was, it clicked, and it's still clicking. And we seem to be, even though our form has dipped a wee bit, there is the kind of ongoing narrative, which I tend to agree with, that we haven't really hit our peak since the Leipzig game. And we've been kind of in a wee bit of a slump since then. So we need a big win just to go out and put down a marker ahead of next week.
I'm looking at the next 2 games, Liam, and I'm pretty sure, we hear all the cliches, 1 game at a time, etc. But when you have a game of the magnitude that we have on the 2nd of January, and you've got 2 games beforehand, I think what you're doing there is you are tinkering with that side to get it prepared and get it 100% firing for that game at Ibrox. And I'm pretty sure Brendan Rodgers will be the exact same. You and I will talk about what we think we should do today in terms of the lineup. Play your strongest side. But the big question at the moment is, what is your strongest side? This is the thing. Gerard Fitzpatrick, thank you so much for supporting the channel. As I say, as we move throughout the next 50 minutes or so, we're going to be talking about what next for Acsom. Because the big thing for me, Liam, I always look back at this time of year. I think most people do. It's a good time to look back and say, well, what have you done? What have you done well? What could you improve on? How are you going to make it better this time next year when we're talking on Boxing Day in 2025? So there's lots of things changing. I think in the last year, one of the biggest things has been the introduction of the Friday night show, This is Acsom. And on this Friday, tomorrow night, John Higgins, 4-time world champion snooker player, will be joining us for This is Acsom. We're going to continue with that show. It's been a really good addition to A Celtic State of Mind and to the channel. And also, we need to get away, I feel, from the dial-in. We need to get away from the dial-in style of show, because when we started that up 4.5 years ago, it wasn't the thing. It wasn't as though there were 20 other channels doing it, Liam. It was fairly new to this type of content. But now I feel that every time you switch on YouTube or you look at the socials, there's a screen and there's 2 or 3 or 4 blocks and there's Celtic fans chatting, which is fine. But Acsom wants to be doing it our own way. So there's going to be a different look to the 12:30 bulletin next year. There's going to be a different look entirely. So looking forward to that. We're going to increase the amount of content on the channel as well. So yesterday, although I wanted to come on at 12:30, 1 or 2 other wee bits were in the way when you've got a young family and all that, Liam. You get roped in to having celebrations for breakfast, heroes for lunch, etc., etc. No alcohol was taken yesterday. I had to keep myself fresh if it was a pre-match. But obviously what I would like to do is ensure that every single week, 52 weeks a year, 7 days a week, there will be Acsom content on the channel of some description. So we're looking towards doing that. And an increase in the quality. So fully produced rather than a dial-in style that looks as though you're having a meeting with your gaffer from a remote island somewhere. That type of meeting where you're dialing in, Liam, and you're going through an agenda. We don't want it to look like that. We want it to be a wee bit more dynamic. So I'm not going to give all the secrets away. That's what's happening.
Is this your polite way of telling me I'm bagged?
No. I think what we do, well, Liam, there's massive developments with your good self, obviously. We'll dig into that. We'll dig into that once it starts to come to fruition. But I think what it gives us the opportunity to do is set up dial-in shows that actually suits the contributors in terms of your own time, because often yourself, Ian, and the Aussie boys are coming in at god-awful times to talk about Celtic. So I think what we'll do with that is we'll club that together and have a traditional style live stream, but it'll be at a time that's actually more suitable to you and the Celtic fans from Japan, New Zealand, Australia, etc. So lots happening. If you tune in at 12:30 every day, you can still do that, and you'll still get Acsom chat for an hour. You'll actually get more than an hour, but we'll dig into that as it happens. And we'll talk about some of the developments for yourself over the next couple of weeks as well, Liam. Now, Jungle Lion, you're right. Yes, it is the first time we have ever gone live at 12:30 when there's a 3 o'clock kickoff. Here's an interesting thing, and I'm not 100% sure of the answer, Liam. I'm genuinely asking this of yourself and of the commenters who are tuning in. 500 strong on Boxing Day. Unbelievable. Today's game is available on PPV. So you can log into Celtic TV and you can watch it. You can pay $12.99 and you can watch the game live. It's not Saturday, but it's a 3 o'clock kickoff, which is that traditional time that blocks out the broadcasters, apparently, Liam, right? Although I think there's been a kind of loosening of those rules over the years. Celtic obviously have a Celtic TV service where they show live games outside of Scotland, England, Ireland and Wales. But if you cannot get a ticket for the game, and there's plenty of people sitting on that waiting list, you can't get along to the game, it's not being televised, how do you watch it? And it's pushing people into, these live stream channels that you look for a stream and all this kind of stuff. Doesn't today show that Celtic could simply have the rights for it and just broadcast it even on a PPP service? There's enough fans who can't get to the game who will buy that today.
Yeah, I think that it's something that Celtic and the current incarnation of Rangers should both look at doing. Because, let's face it, the British broadcasters have nothing but contempt for Scottish football with the derisory money that they offer.
Yeah.
And, do we really need to demean ourselves that much for the sake of a few million quid, which is, is coppers compared to what we make in Europe?
Yeah.
And also, more personally, my dad is one of the guys who will be paying that $12.90. Well, he'll pay a tenner because he's a Celtic TV member already. To watch that game today. And he has mobility issues. He's even if he was able to get a ticket, getting to the game and getting up the stairs, whatever, would be difficult for him. So it's for people like him. During the pandemic, there was a lot of talk about, oh, this is great, football's on the telly. And it wasn't just like people saying, oh, good, I can watch the game now. It was like people saying, I don't usually get to see live football with my team because, I can't physically go to the stadium. And a lot of people were saying, like, why are we phasing this out? Because clearly people want it. Clearly people are willing to pay for it. And the thing is, even if you don't charge for it, people are going to get it through these streams or whatever. To me, and I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, it's the same argument as like marijuana, weed, right? People are going to smoke it one way or another. So you might as well just make it legal and then you can tax it and you can regulate it.
This is a big argument, isn't it? The decriminalisation of anything, really. I mean, that's a massive selling point for them. The big thing for me as well with the situation with away games, Liam, I know that's not a problem today, but struggling to get tickets for away games. And these teams, if they came to you and thought, and they actually had a business plan where they're saying, oh, but what we are providing is we're providing this brilliant PPV service, at least you would understand there was a point and a reasoning behind reducing the allocation of tickets. I think it's something that needs to change. You look at the income streams at Scottish football, we still very much rely as a Scottish game on punters through the door, right? Massive income stream, whereas you go to Germany, you look at England, and the people coming through the door isn't the biggest income stream. They've got massive broadcasting deals, like you said earlier. We don't. We've got a derisory broadcast deal. Celtic need to take more control of that. And if PPV is the answer, and you can get X amount every single home game tuning in on a PPV service, then I think we need to do it. And we need to do it more often until, of course, we increase the capacity of Celtic Park. But there will still be people, like you say, like your old man, Liam, who will want to sit at home and watch, or they have to sit at home and they would like to watch the football. Obviously, fast forward 10 years and 10 Boxing Days, Liam, we'll be talking about watching it on the VRs. We know that. You and I know that. I'll be watching the game sitting next to you, even though you're in Japan. I cannot wait for that. That's going to be an interesting thing. And then that will just become the norm as well. So let's have a wee chat about that. But you spoke about the fact that there's a derisory broadcasting deal, and a big part of that is because there's this view that, oh, you're tin pot and all you've got to sell is Celtic and Rangers. This age-old debate popped up on my screen this morning when I was looking through my socials. Alan Brazil, fair play. Alan Brazil would be a good guest for This Is Acsom, wouldn't he? He'd be a decent guest, aye. So he was chatting away, and one thing I'd say about Alan Brazil is that he does talk up Celtic. He talks Celtic up, right? And the buffoon, and I don't mind calling him that, Jason Cundy, the buffoon, that is Jason Cundy, argued the toss that Celtic would be no better than Barnsley if they were playing in the English League. No better than Barnsley, Liam. And you know what annoyed me about it, right? See if he's got a point. If you've got a point, mate, go and tell me why you get to that. That is your opinion. How do you reach that conclusion? Because all they kept saying is, no, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. And that's all they kept saying. And then the example that he gave is, Liverpool have won one league title in 30 years. What makes you think Celtic would compete? Unbelievable short-sightedness, Liam, because there's so many people who are in the mainstream who basically have that argument. And my counter has always been, you give me any, because the way they're thinking is you're taking the Celtic squad as it is right now, and you're asking the question, would that compete? Well, I'd be the first to say, no, we would struggle. But it wouldn't be that Celtic squad because your budget would be completely different if you joined the English Premier League. Similarly, and this is always my argument, you take any team in the English Premiership, put them in our league, they would be bust within a week. So that's the same argument. We're not talking about that, right? We're talking about, no, if a team was to join another league, everything changes. The financials change, the broadcasting deals change. Celtic, in terms of a standalone fan base, a support, Liam, absolutely engulfs most of the teams in that division. Yet people like Cundy, who go on about Chelsea, I mean, one of the examples he spoke about was Chelsea. I'm thinking, mate, Chelsea might be in a richer league. They're not a bigger club than Celtic. Nowhere near it. Nowhere near it. And any other income stream, for example, if you were to look at the fan base worldwide, the fan base of Chelsea versus the fan base of Celtic, you honestly trying to tell me they're a bigger club? But I'm bringing it up. People will come into the comments and say, just ignore them. But then they've got free reign to talk Celtic down, Liam, and I think we need to use our platform to talk Celtic up.
See, that Cundy clown is him and Adrian Durham, and there's quite a few of these English guys who have clearly never been to a Scottish football match, but they seem to think that they're experts on how bad it all is, right? You know, Guy failed as a footballer and he's now failing as a broadcast journalist as well. And really, he's part of this pattern that I see. Maybe it's because I'm not in Scotland or not in the UK that I can see this from a wider perspective, maybe. But people like him, Tom English at the BBC, numerous others, they're all part of this same thing. They don't know how to actually do journalism. It's just here's what you should be angry about today, and they just go on their spiel. You know, with him, it's cheap shots at Scottish football. There's that Ewan Murray that writes for the Guardian. Every single time he covers a Celtic game, he has to take a cheap shot at us. He just can't help himself. Claims he's a Hearts fan, but I don't believe that. And you know, it's this pattern of just, I don't have a narrative of my own, so I'm just going to make a living out of complaining. I mean, people do it on YouTube as well.
Yeah,
there's like so many channels on here that are just like professional grievance. You know, I'm okay, everybody. Here's what I'm telling you. You should be pissed off about today.
And if you're not, really, I'll make sure you are by the end of the show.
Yeah, aye.
But this is the thing, right? Yeah. When I look at Scottish football, the first people I feel to criticise Scottish football are those who are invested in it in any way, shape, or form, be that a fan or you know, someone who's involved in a football club. I actually think that we're very realistic when we talk about Scottish football, and we're constantly, Liam, talking about how to improve the game because we know that there's plenty wrong with the game. But when you are basically saying that Celtic Football Club couldn't, you know, move into another division, right, acclimatise to that division, and then build up to a point whereby it then comes down to the nuts and bolts of how big a football club you are. Because once everybody gets the broadcasting money and there's that levelling process, when you then have a top 8 and you've got that middle section, and then you've got all these teams that bounce up and down the leagues, Liam, it does come down to the brass bolts of who are the biggest clubs here. And it's the biggest clubs who will obviously rise to the top. Celtic would be one of those clubs. And I think that I would love to see Martin O'Neill on a show with this guy, because O'Neill would, you would have him for breakfast in terms of that, wouldn't he? But I think as a football club, what we need to do, interesting enough, a friend of mine, a friend of ours, was talking about the fact that they were at Celtic Park recently for one of the tours, and the vibe in the place was not if we rebuild the main stand, but when we rebuild the main stand, this is what's going to happen. And that's something that we need to do as a football club. We need to have that foresight. And on a much, much tinier, smaller scale, I do think the same about Acsom. I think, what have we done? What have we achieved so far? How can we make it better? So in 2025, not immediately, because obviously there's an infrastructure and everything to put in place. What we're going to produce, what we're going to provide to the people who are so loyal to us and who subscribe to us and watch us every day is a better product. We're going to make it better. That's what we're going to do. And we're not going to throw anybody outside the G postcode on the scrap heap, Liam, by the way. We will make sure that you guys are still involved 100%. Let's have a look at some of the comments coming through before we dive into this predicted 11 for the Motherwell game. And Gerard Fitzpatrick, we've also already seen you popping up. Celtic haven't scored. This is an interesting one. In the first half, in 8 of their 16 league games so far this season. Now, I hadn't looked at the stat, but this actually doesn't surprise me, because I feel as though, Liam, I've sat here at half-time during many games this season and had this very discussion. The fact that we're maybe a slow starter in terms of the team. Only the bottom 5 have a worse record. Now, listen, if you come out in the second half and you win the game, that's fine. But what we did see against Dundee United is we just couldn't get started. Because we didn't have that dynamic start, that high-tempo start. It's almost as if we couldn't go through the gears. And I think that the reason for it against United, it's not always been the reason. We didn't have the personnel. We were missing some very important players. So their backups, the guys that you were looking at on the bench at 60 minutes, you're looking at them on Sunday there and you're thinking, well, I don't have the confidence that they're going to come in and put us through those gears, Liam. That's a very interesting stat, isn't it?
Yeah. Aye, and I didn't realise it was that many. Thinking back, there's, I can remember a few games off the top of my head where we've been nothing each at half time, then we went on to win. But God, half of the games this season, that's a strange one. But having seen it in print now and thinking about it, I'm not that surprised. But it's, I can't really put my finger on that, because the times when we do start well, we tend to start really well. I mean, was it Ross County? We were 5-0 up at half time.
Yeah, and you know what, right? Roughly the same time, if you want to rewind, right? Remember the 7-1 game against Dundee, and we were 6-0 up at half time last season. So the first half of the game, sometimes we come out and we obliterate sides, Liam, and then we calm down in the second half, which is quite a natural thing. You notice that if you're 5-0 up, you're not winning 10-0. But you're right, we have seen it. It's not as though we can't do it. And I'm looking at today and I'm looking at the next game before the Rangers game, and I'm hoping that we have that in the first half. So we're not sitting at half time and it'll be myself and Chris McElwain and Lawrence Conley during the match day stuff. And we're not sitting at half time thinking, how do we get through these gears here? Where's the spark?
Yeah, because particularly next week at Ibrox, a quick start is going to be very important, because when we play them at Celtic Park, the fans are an advantage for us, right? The fans G us up. The fans get the players going. Whereas at Ibrox, see if it gets to like half an hour in and they're no winning, their mob turn on them.
Yeah,
and they turn on them quite viciously, and you can visibly see some of their players getting rattled by it. So if we can get a goal or two up early, they'll crumble. They will completely crumble, and the fans will turn on them, and it will make for some decent comedy on the YouTube for the coming weeks.
Yeah, because I mean, there's nothing like having a steady kind of outlook to your football team, because they really are manic. 1 minute they're up here, next minute they're down here. I don't want to focus too much on them unless it's something that's involving Celtic. But when we were on the other day, of course, Liam, there was the statement that came out, and the word credibility. We had a good laugh about the word credibility. No one has done more for Scottish football in terms of credibility than the club releasing that statement, of course. And in relation to that, I do feel as though we're in a situation where you cannot allow the tail to wag the dog here, Liam, right? So if you've got officials, and today's officials, for anyone who doesn't know, Ross Hardy's the ref. I cannot remember a game that Ross Hardy has ever refereed involving Celtic. So that's an interesting one. Don't know if he's maybe up and coming. Not a name that I'm that familiar with. The assistant referees are Jonathan Bell and Gordon Crawford. We have Ewan Anderson on the VAR with the assistant VAR, Graham Stewart. So that will be later on against Motherwell. But as I say, tail wagging the dog, Liam, that's a very, very, dangerous path to take. If you allow a member club to come out and start naming individuals who they don't think should be refereeing games involving certain clubs. This is not the first time they've done that, incidentally.
No.
And when they made a complaint, they've made complaints against Willie Collum, and it resulted in, I don't know how long it took for him to referee another game that involved Rangers. They made a complaint against Kevin Clancy, and it resulted in Clancy's family being at threat, their home address being under threat, if you remember. Right, and the club comes out, and I think they've got a duty to protect the officials as much as anything. All joking aside, Liam, but this is something they continually do. Why did the authorities sit back and allow them to do that? With impunity. It's as if there's a set of rules for all of us, and we'll be pulled over the hot coals. But the minute you come out and throw your toys at the pram, everybody just allows it to happen. I think it was an atrocious way to conduct themselves.
We know exactly why they allow it, because it's that club.
Mm-hmm.
That's a simple reason. It is one set of rules for them and another for everybody else. Because I said on Tuesday, I said, Celtic said something nowhere near as inflammatory as that, and yet refs went on strike over it.
Mm-hmm.
So where are those striking referees now? Their integrity, their capabilities are being called into question, and I think it's unfair. It is unfair to them, because the difference is when Celtic complain, we do it the right way. We raise a issue with the authorities and what have you, right? Whereas with them, they'll make their statements written in crayon and whatever, but then you'll get their fans threatening people, sending, doxing them online and whatever, and it's like it goes beyond just football. And that can't happen.
It needs to be contained. Now, sometimes it's frustrating, Liam. I'll admit it. Sometimes you only find out that Celtic are doing stuff when they are finally challenged about it at an AGM. And they'll say, actually, we're in dialogue, and we have been in dialogue for this length of time. And sometimes you get a wee bit frustrated at that, because it's almost as if, where's the engagement? How come you're not updating us? However, they're doing it in such a way, like you say, to protect the interested parties. That's the reason they're doing it. They're keeping it in-house. And we all know that whilst Frank Connor is involved in a game involving Celtic don't lose. We know that. But I'm, of course, talking about the late, great Frank Connor, who managed a few games back in the 90s and could not get beat. I had the great pleasure of meeting Frank Connor, the original Frank Connor. What a day that was, Liam. You know how you almost take a step back in time into the old school, right? That was like meeting Frank, right? And I was introduced to Frank Connor, now dearly departed, I've got to say. I was introduced to him by one of his young players that he used to look after, who was on the ground staff, and that was Graham Morrison, who also sadly has passed away. And he took me through, and we met up with him. We went to his door, and as we were walking up the driveway, Graham turned to me and goes, "I've not had a shave today. You see how long it takes for Frank to notice, right?" And Frank Connor opens the door. First thing he said, "Graham, you've not had a shave." And it was standards. It took them back to the 90s where Frank was involved at Celtic and Graham was a young boy in the ground staff. "You've not had a shave." Picked him up for it. He was immaculately dressed, Liam. Shirt, tie, jacket, everything, not a hair out of place. And we went for lunch and everything, and I was speaking to him about that. And I've still got it on tape. Never ever used the interview. I've still got it on tape. I used some wee quotes for the Nearly Mocking book. And he was talking about that. And the minute I started giving him praise for those games in the 90s where it was between the managerial tenures of Liam Brady and Lou McCarry, Frank Connor steps in and he's the interim manager. And he was like, no. He took no credit for it, Liam. He said, we all buckled, we all got together. And Nearly Mocking was part of that. And all the coaching staff who were still there were part of that. And they managed to get a few results, one of which famously was against Rangers at Ibrox 2-1. Lou McCarry was in the dugout that day, but Frank gave the team talk, picked the team, etc. We also beat Sporting Lisbon as well. Frank Connor, what a genius.
I remember that. Aye.
And there was a draw. There was a draw in the mix as well. And Frank Connor, dearly missed. Here we go. John Mullane, just arrived in Glasgow for the next 4 days. Come on, the boys. This is what I'm talking about, right? So people are coming from all over to watch Celtic, Liam, and there needs to be the capacity within Celtic Park to allow as many people to watch the club as possible, but also be other ways to allow people to watch the games. And we've been talking about the PPV aspect of that earlier on. Sean Spillane, number 119, hails to everyone today. 3 points and some goals, please, Celtic. Well, that would be nice. We don't want to be scraping through and wondering if we've lost a bit of spark before the game at Ibrox on the 2nd of January. I want to see a more attacking midfield, taking shots and getting in the box. Right. We'll be talking about that. Let's start off then. I heard this morning that there was the return of 3 players who were missing from the Celtic squad against Dundee United. The 3 that I've been told about, which do not correlate with the leaked team, Liam, is Alistair Johnston, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Austin Trusty. They're all coming back for today's game, apparently. And I say apparently because after reading that, we were then furnished with a leaked team, which didn't have Alistair Johnston in it, but it did have Nicholas Kuhn. I would be surprised if Kuhn makes it today, Liam.
Aye, because I think you want to make sure he is absolutely 100% and play him in the next game as a prep for next week. I said the other day, if any players we're no sure about, don't play them today. Save them for the weekend.
I totally agree with that. And particularly when you look at the effectiveness of Nicholas Kuhn this season, the right-hand side is going to be a massive discussion point. We're going to start, though, with the defence and Schmeichel. He is the first name on the team sheet. As cliched as that sounds, he's the first name because he's a goalie, but he's the first name because of the importance of his performances this season. The best signing of the summer, if you ask me. Make sure you've got him for another year and make sure of that ASAP. I think what he's brought to the football club is incredible, especially when you look at who he was replacing, Liam. I know you've got a penchant for Celtic goalies. Where does he rank? Because we have had a good run. If you go back to Boruc, Foster, Gordon, Hart, and now Schmeichel, we'll forget that wee tickly bit during the COVID season where there was a few imposters in there. But where does he rank for you, Schmeichel? I know he's not been here for a full season yet, but he's up there, isn't he?
Aye, I love Joe Hart. Guy's an absolute legend. But I honestly think Schmeichel's a better keeper than Joe Hart. He's up there with Arthur Boruc for me in terms of goalkeepers that I really enjoy watching. And Boruc was as much his character as his goalkeeping ability that kind of got him up there.
Yeah.
But I still think the best individual save I've ever seen from a Celtic goalkeeper was that Fraser Foster one in the last minute against Lazio. That was
unbelievable.
Just
incredible.
He had no right getting anywhere near that. And so I think, Schmeichel is capable of those kind of saves, though. I think we've seen that in his time at previous clubs. And he's especially good at this thing, which is difficult for Celtic goalkeepers, where he can react and do something, like a reaction save or an instinctive block when he's had nothing to do for the previous half an hour. It's quite difficult, I think, to do that. Just switch on to that level when you are a pedestrian for large parts of the game.
Absolutely. Now, I'm just jotting down here because it is quite a good debate before we move into the defence, because there's no doubt Schmeichel's going to be playing today. I'm jotting down here, right? I'm going to start off with the 4 goalies, and then I'm going to see where Schmeichel will enter into this collective. So the goalkeepers we're talking about, of course, if we go backwards, it's Kasper Schmeichel, it's Joe Hart, it's Fraser Foster, Craig Gordon, Arthur Boruc. And the question, of course, let us know in the comments section, very interesting discussion point. Where does Schmeichel rate? Where does he rank within those 5? And I'm looking at it, and I agree with you when it comes to Boruc. Boruc was an incredibly talented goalie. We've had the pleasure of speaking to Gordon Strachan twice in the last couple of years on stage at one of our live events. And he said Boruc had the ability to be world class. And he believed that at the time, and he believes it with hindsight. And the reason he never attained the world-class status was his lifestyle. He had a very choice lifestyle. You know, you're talking about him being something of a cult legend. Well, part of that was he was always overweight. He was always partying. I mean, we're not making this up. This is coming from the gaffer, you know, who at one point was looking for him at half-time, Liam, and he was in the cubicle having a cigarette. Half-time, I'll just go for a wee smoke. No problem, mate. So Boruc, yeah, you're right. The likability factor is there with Boruc. And I think that, yeah, he's a brilliant goalkeeper, but sometimes people, Boruc is the best. I actually think Foster was a better goalie for Celtic. And I'm thinking of big games that he won us. I'm thinking about the League Cup final, the Barcelona 2-1, the Lazio game that you're talking about, where a save or a collection of saves from Foster were as good as the goals, you know. For me, he's the number one. Fraser Forster's the number one. I'm then asking myself, well, Boruc, how highly does his attitude and his character and personality elevate him? Pretty highly, it's got to be said, right? I mean, the Pope T-shirts and all the rest of it, right? You're doing okay with it. But in terms of his quality as well as a goalie, Boruc is number two for me, right? Now, the next two, and then I'll throw Casper in. The next two, Craig Gordon and Joe Hart. Likeability works massively in Joe Hart's favour here, right? Because see, Craig Gordon's a Jambo, right? He's a Hearts legend, right? But I tell you what, he was a great goalie for Celtic. Craig Gordon was an outstanding goalkeeper for Celtic. Was he better than Joe Hart over the 2 seasons, Liam? You're a goalie. You're for the goalies union.
I mean, if you're talking just pure technical ability, I think it's very hard to pick between the two of them. But I would say just for reactions, Gordon's probably better.
It's maybe better. But then Joe Hart's far more likeable.
And Joe Hart's very a leader. And I think that was what we needed at that time. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a tough one, right? And this is maybe controversial, but I've actually got Craig Gordon above Joe Hart. Sorry, guys. I love Joe. It was brilliant to see him at the Dundee United game as a fan with his wee boy. I love all that because it's not just bluster talking about, you know, loving Celtic. Well, he proved that he was at an away day. Right. So there you go. Controversially, prior to Schmeichel's arrival, I'm going Foster, Boruc, Gordon, Hart. Right? Disagree. Right. Throw your disagreements in the comments. But the big question is, where does Schmeichel sit at the moment? Right, well, he's above Hart for me. He is above Hart for me. He's above Gordon, right? Yeah. Has he done enough to be above Boruc yet? Or are we just talking about technical ability? He's there or thereabouts for me. He's sitting at about number 2. I don't think he's done enough as a Celtic goalie to be above Foster yet. He needs to do it over a period of time. But I think there's an argument to say that he's maybe him and Boruc are neck and neck for me at the moment.
What we need from Casper is a really big moment in Europe, right? Because for me, that's what elevates, at the moment, that's what elevates Forster and Boruc above him at Celtic, right? Everybody remembers Nakamura's free kick against Man United. It was on my birthday, right? I mean, I remember that so clearly. But a lot of people, I mean, Celtic fans obviously don't forget, but a lot of people who just remember that free kick don't remember that Boruc saved a penalty like 2 minutes later. And it was a really, really good save as well. So he's had that iconic European moment. Was it Spartak Moscow we played in the qualifiers a couple of years later and Boruc ended up taking the winning penalty?
It was a celebration, honestly.
Aye. And then you've got, you know, Forster, as we said, he was unplayable against Barcelona, twice against Lazio. He had some really big European games for us. And so to me, at the moment, it's Forster, Boruc, and then Schmeichel in terms of the ranking. And I would probably put Craig Gordon above Joe Hart at a push as well. So
it's interesting that it really is, because before we started discussing this, I probably wouldn't have thought that would be my order. But now, when I really think about it, that is my order. So it's Foster, Boruc, Gordon, Hart. And I agree with you. I think Schmeichel is in that realm of big performance, and it could happen this season before he leapfrogs Boruc. There was also the game against Man U. Remember, they were wearing their blue kits against us. And that was the game also that Gordon Strachan pinpointed. And when Strachan does these things, he doesn't just turn up and just answer questions. He turns up with presentations, Liam. I'm talking video content comes up on the big screens, and Strachan talks you through certain things, right? Sometimes it's really funny, and sometimes it's really tactically insightful, because you're sitting as an observer, a fan, a casual observer, and then he tells you how things actually happened, and it was all planned out. So he plays a clip, and going into the clip, what he says is normally you'll remember a game, like you say, for one spectacular save from a goalie. He goes, you watch this. He says, Boruc makes 4 world-class saves in this one game, and it's against Man U, and they're absolutely hammering us, right? That was a game where I think we brought on Ben Hutchinson. That was our best option off the bench, right?
Oh dear. Right.
Yeah. Riordan was probably on the bench, but he wasn't getting a game. But Hutchison came on in that particular game, and they had Tevez and Ronaldo and Rooney and all that on the park, Berbatov. And he played the clip. And this compilation clip, there must have been between 4 and 6 saves, Liam, that you were just like, wow, unbelievable. Kind of lost, because when you think back to those Man U games, you think of the goals, don't you? You think of Nakamura in particular. But yeah, Boruc, absolutely outstanding goalkeeper, and not long retired. Remember, he played against Celtic for his kind of benefit, or his farewell game for Legia Warsaw, wasn't it? So there you go. Quinny. It was great to see Quinny up at his Swiss Alps residence the other day, dialing in. Merry Christmas, hail to you as well, mate. And hopefully you and the family are having a great time. Mr. Whip, this is going to take us into another conversation. Might see Ida and Kyogo get a start today. We need a change to freshen attack up. Right, let's go into this game then, Liam, and ask the question. If Kuhn isn't playing, if Kuhn is not fit due to the fact that he was assaulted against Rangers, and that was a big talking point that didn't seem to get loads of column inches. If he's not playing today, as he missed the Dundee United game, he could still be unfit. It does beg the question, and I pitched in the other day there saying, why don't, because I'm sorry, I'm not confident with Yang, I'm not confident with Palmer. Even in a game like today against Motherwell at home, I just can't see it. I don't think they're going to do it for us, Liam, and I do think we could play Ida up top, and we might be able to play Kyogo on the right. What's your thoughts?
Yep, I would do that. Kyogo has had his most, when he's, and the few times that he's played for Japan, he's had his most success playing on the right wing. He played on the right wing mostly for Vissel Kobe before we signed him. Ange converted him to a striker basically when he signed him.
Right.
So the right wing was where Kyogo kind of made his name and where he first got his international breakthrough. So he can definitely play there. Mm-hmm. And I would agree that at the moment, that's a better option than Yang or Palma. I still think there's a player in Yang, but he just doesn't show it enough. And time's running out. I think it was yourself that pointed out he's had more game time than Kuhn has. And he's not come close to making that breakthrough.
Nowhere near it.
No.
The thing is, Liam, I get why, when we're starting to discuss a player like we are right now with Yang, I get why there's people in the comments saying, what's with the agenda against Yang? He needs a chance, he needs time, etc., etc., etc. But when you then start digging into that, and Alan Morrison can do it in far greater depth than we do. But even if you just look at the fact that in terms of games appeared in, Yang has appeared in more games than Nicholas Kuhn. He has had more time at the club than Nicholas Kuhn. He's had ample opportunity. And sometimes against opposition, Liam, that if you can't do it, and I know this is something of an old cliche, if you can't do it at Brockville on a wet Tuesday night, if you can't do it against Motherwell, right, or if you're going into a game against Motherwell at home and you're not confident that that player can do it, almost a year and a half into his tenure at Celtic, you think to yourself, well, you're never going to be able to do it. You're never going to get over that. So that's where I am at the moment with Yang. Danielle comes in and asks, what is the leaked team? Well, the leaked team that's doing the rounds, Danielle, on WhatsApp, and I'm only going to read this out for entertainment purposes. I'm not claiming this is going to be the team. It's Schmeichel, Ralston, Carter Vickers, Trusty, Baye, Atati, Kalmak, Engels, Kyogo, Maeda, and Kuhn. That's the team that's doing the rounds. And to be honest with you, you could get 11 players' names and throw them up in the air, and that could be the team. Because, Baye, why would you drop Taylor if he's fit, Liam? Why would you drop Taylor at this stage? If Baye was going to play, then he might have come on against Dundee United when we needed something different. You know, he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't come off the bench. I can't see him then getting thrown in. I mean, resting a player, I get it, but you know, it's not as though Taylor needs a rest.
The only way that would work would be if the manager's wanting to bed him in with a view to playing him against Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love Greg Taylor. I'll defend the guy. I think he's one of our most consistent 7 or 8 out of 10 performers every week, despite, you know, a couple of high-profile gaffes. But the fact that he did have that gaff against Rangers in the cup final, it makes me wonder, would Brendan be contemplating perhaps putting Valle in for that game? Just because, is there a concern that maybe they've figured Taylor out and they've figured out how to play to his weakness?
Well, that game against Rangers, I thought, spoke volumes. And at half-time, if you were listening to any, I was with Quinny and Lloyd watching the game. If you're listening to anybody within our vicinity, everybody wanted him hooked. Everybody wanted Taylor hooked. And this is the interesting thing, because I think, you know, Brendan Rodgers, I don't think it's his norm. I don't think it's his MO to do that at half-time with him. He has done it. I mean, he hooked Taylor against Borussia Dortmund, you'll remember. And I thought Baye came on and did okay under the circumstances. But what I think he did was a brilliant piece of man management with Greg Taylor, because he kept him on. He kept him on. He got his goal, right, albeit deflected. He got his goal. And the other one, of course, was I don't think anybody expected him to take off Trusty and throw Scales into the mix. Yeah? But then Scales gets his assist on the Taylor goal. Scales knocked it off the corner into his path. And then he gets his goal, and then I think it's safe at that point almost to say, right, you've made up for it. I'm going to take you off now. But it's an interesting observation from yourself. If Rangers have sussed out Taylor, or they see Taylor as someone they can target as a weak link, that would be the reason to put Baye in there. Because, you know, if you're going to play him against Rangers, you're going to have to build him up for that game. You know, people say if you're at a club like Celtic, you're just going to have to take it. You could be playing Borussia Dortmund one week and Rangers the next. If you're not up for that, you shouldn't be at the football club. But there is a way of bedding a player in. And I know that, like, if you're Alistair Johnston, but he's superhuman, you can throw him into anything. You know, there's a Rangers game, mate. Get on with it. That's fine. This guy, I think we're trying to nurture. We're trying to nurture Alex Valle. So if he is playing in the league team, it's true, and it has been in the past, by the way, that will be an interesting thought process as to why. Because I've not been impressed with him in the last couple of games, Baye. I think his distribution's been poor. He's given the ball away far too often in possession, and that's massive for Brendan. He talks about tidy football, being tidy on the ball. It'll be interesting for me. It wouldn't be my choice. My choice at the back, we'll start with the back four, Liam. And I'm going by the fact that AJ's fit. I'm going, you know, with the kind of information that came out this morning. AJ's fit. I'm playing him. I'm playing Taylor at left back, and my middle two, my first picks still are CCV and Trusty, even though Trusty was hooked against Rangers and then missed the following games through injury / illness. What's your back four? Is that a wee bit harsh on Scalesy, who I think's done well when he came in? And Welsh. Welsh, for me, was the best defender on the park against Dundee United.
It's the same thing I always say, but Stephen Welsh didn't have a bad game, but didn't do anything outstanding to justify displacing the players above him in the order. That's the problem. He always comes in and he's a bit like Taylor. He's always a solid 7 out of 10, but you need to be more than that when you're trying to fight your way into the team. So I can't, I feel sorry for the guy, but I just don't think he's as good as our other options. It is a shame for Scales, but again, I just think our two best choice centre backs are Trusty and Carter Vickers, and if they're both fit, they start. I would start Valle, because I think we do need to change it up a wee bit looking ahead to next week. And I hope Alistair Johnston's back fit. I really do, because I think, again, Tony Ralston, would run through a brick wall for Celtic. Love the guy. But, Johnston is undoubtedly a better player who offers a lot more in an attacking sense as well. So that would be my back four, would be Valle, Trusty, CCV, and Johnson. But whereas I think, I would be concerned if Ralston or Taylor came in, because I think you're weakening the team there. If Scales had to come in for either Trusty or Carter Vickers, I don't necessarily see that as much of a step down, because he has been outstanding this season.
I agree with that. And the other thing I'd say about the right side is that there is not the same understanding between Ralston and Kuhn as there is between AJ and Kuhn. They've got a really good understanding. I actually thought for a spell Engels was part of that, and they were linking up really well down the right-hand side. I don't see Tony Ralston having the same understanding, Liam, down the right. I don't see us being as creative when Tony's in the team. On the left-hand side, here's one then. I'm going to throw Jerry Burns in on this one. You're commenting on the YouTube. By end today, we need him and Maida linking up the left side. I think there's also, as well as looking towards the Rangers game, I think there's a more of a medium-term left-back issue that we've spoken so many times about on Acsom, Liam, whereby if Bai is going to be here to the end of the season, and there's a likelihood that Taylor isn't, because Taylor isn't signing this deal that Celtic are offering him, he thinks he's worth more. And Rodgers has spoken about that twice now, I think, in recent times. We're maybe looking ahead to saying, well, Bai is still going to be at the football club and Taylor's not. By the time this January window shuts, that could be the situation. And by the way, I would expect Bernabe to be away, and I would expect a new left back to come in. But one way or another, Bai is going to be at the football club, either as the backup or the first choice, Liam. So let's start playing him, because Taylor's not part of my plans if he's not going to sign this deal. I think that plays into the thinking as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that if there's any truth at all in the rumours about Kieran Tierney, then Taylor's finished, because the one thing Taylor has going in his favour is that he helps with that homegrown quota, whereas Kieran Tierney would make up the same number, but he's a better player. So I think that this might be a case of the manager just saying, well, if you want the same money as like some of the other better players at the club, just remember I can drop you. You're not untouchable. And I think that sometimes managers do that, and it would be a shame if that was the case, but I wouldn't be entirely surprised if there was a wee bit of mind games going on here as well.
Yeah, and it goes on. It absolutely goes on. And moving into the midfield positions as well, we're all going to have our view on it. I've spoken about also, I spoke about this against Dundee United. I was so lacking in faith when it came to Yang and Palmer. I would actually play McKeown on the right-hand side. Wilson also points that out. Good shout, McKeown on the right-hand side. McKeown didn't have his best game against Dundee United, incidentally. Lost the ball far too often in the time he was on the park. But, of course, the big change in McKeown's career came when he was switched from a right winger to a central midfield player. So is it a good idea to put him out in a position where he's weaker? I'm not quite sure about that. So that's a thing for me. I would play Kyogo on the right today. I don't have the confidence in Yang or Palmer. Play either through the middle. Made his name's on the team sheet. Every time he's fit, he plays. So now it's just a question about your three midfielders. And when I look at that midfield, Callum McGregor's a first pick all day long, obviously. Paulo Bernardo gets a game for me right now. He's the starter for me, Liam. And then the big question is, who is that third midfielder? Is it Hatate? Is it McKeown? Or is it Engels? Now, Rio Hatate got a bit of stick against Dundee United. He wasn't the creative spark that we needed, etc., etc. Can you play McGregor, Bernardo, and Engels and have enough creativity about you? That's a big question, I think. Or do you drop Hatate for McKeown and bring Bernardo back in? I'm going to go for the following three, Liam, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. McGregor, Bernardo, and Engels. I'm bringing Engels back into the team today.
All right. I would go McGregor, McKeown, and Hatate. So we're having a wee bit of a disagreement here. But I'll explain why. Like you say, McGregor, club captain, the one guy that always will play when he's fully fit. I think McKeown did have a bad game last weekend, but so did most of the team. And on recent form, he's been one of our best midfielders. I think. He has been involved in a lot of our goal-scoring play. He's got a couple of goals himself. He looks dangerous going forward. Hatate will always give you that danger, even when he's not having a great game. He's still got that potential to produce that wee spark. Didn't do it in the last game, but he's got that. And I think Bernardo has shown that he's good as an impact player coming off the bench. Engels has not done enough to earn a start for me at the moment, but I hope he plays some part in the game because I want to see him to continue to be involved.
If we go, I'm just thinking back, I'm going to check it while I'm talking here. If we go back to the kind of this period last season, and I'm thinking about the Rangers game where we beat them 2-1. And in that particular game, obviously Bernardo being something of a hero that day. I thought he was brilliant. Scores a goal, of course. That was during that kind of run of form that we called Bernardo's purple patch, remember? And he scored a few goals and he did really, really well. And he started looking like an attacking force, whereas up to that point, he'd been used more of a defensive player, particularly in the Champions League games. And he came to the fore. Now, by the way, he then fell back away and he became a sub again. By the time the Scottish Cup final comes around, he's on the bench and he's getting used as that impact player that you described. But I think that there's two things happening here. Firstly, Bernardo needs to establish himself in the Celtic side. And I think his performances so far, he's the guy that I think would be feeling hard done by when he's not getting a start. McGregor, that picks himself. The Hatate thing, you know how much I love Hatate. I really do. I mean, in terms of the creative spark, the guy who's a game changer and all the rest of it. And we don't have to go back months and months to see it. I mean, we saw it against Aberdeen up at Pittodrie, where we needed that moment in magic, Liam, and Rio gave us it, right? Okay, last couple of games, maybe it's not came off for him, but that's fine. But at the same time, I'm looking at Engels and I'm thinking the time is now for Engels to put everything that's gone before behind him now. And he needs to start earning his place in the starting 11 because he was brought to the football club as a starter, but he's not starting games and he's not starting games regularly. When was his first start? That would be an interesting one to look at as well. And I think we start, like you say, building for the Rangers game. Going into the Rangers game, you want Hatate in it. So I can see why you would pick him today. Absolutely. Yeah. But at the same time, based on form, Bernardo gets a game for me. And then based on trying to get a player who might be a bit short in confidence back into the fold and start building him up a wee bit, that's why I'm going for Engels. So maybe there's a sentimentality there rather than just saying Hatate's a better player. Play him. Aye. Or we're playing against Rangers in 2 games' time. Play Hatate because he will start at Ibrox. So I wouldn't be surprised either way. And personally, I'm going to go for Engels. I think we need to start building him up again before it gets to that point where he's sitting on that bench come the turn of the new year and all this, and people are starting to see he's a flop, etc. Because as great as Brendan is at talking him up, Liam, that will be playing in the kid's mind. The fact he's come here and he's sitting on the bench.
Engels needs now exactly what Bernardo needed at this time last year. He needs to come on and score the winner against Rangers.
Totally.
and do that, and you're an instant hero. That's he needs a big goal in a big game to just ingratiate himself with the fans. Because I think most fans can see there's a player there. It's just no clicking for him right now. And Bernardo did that, and then that was the springboard to the run of form, which basically was the reason why we made him a permanent signing.
Totally.
So I hope that Engels can do something similar. I would love to see that next week.
Oh, I know. The timing would be impeccable. AG, in you come. You're on the YouTube. I'd send Yang out on loan. A lot of people saying that on the comment section. I look at it and think to myself, it's maybe come a wee bit late. I thought I would have put him out on loan when I put Kwon out on loan. Get the boy game time. Potentially, I know that there's an argument to say that you can't develop. I think you can develop in the Scottish League. I think that Liam Scales proves that. Chris Ayer did it. Ryan Christie did it. Kwon's out at Hibs at the moment. And I think that Yang might well benefit from it. But I think long-term, he doesn't have a place in the Celtic side if we want to progress. Thomas Dunn, good call. Ida up top with Kyogo out right. Yang is the weakest link. Not a Celtic player for me. Mikey Johnson is a better than Yang. By the way, he scored another couple of goals the other day. And Danielle, you're back in as well. I'd like to see Kyogo and Maeda on the wings with Ida up top. Can't put up with Yang again. Sorry. And Claire, hopefully you're getting better. after your recent injury. Come on, Celtic, 6 points in the next 2 home games, and then some scalping on January the 2nd. Whatever could you mean, Claire? Listen, it is Boxing Day. We know that people are still in that zone. It's a strange old zone. What day of the week is it? Who knows? But it's Boxing Day, and Celtic are playing Motherwell at 3 o'clock. We'll be back at 2:30 to cover the game, of course. I've got to say a big farewell to Liam, because I don't think we're going to see you before the new year, Liam. We might do.
I've got my work tomorrow, so I can't do the game tonight, I'm afraid.
There you go. You've got your work tomorrow, my friend. But it's been an absolute pleasure all year, Liam, and it's been great today to get a catch up on all things Celtic. Thank you all for getting involved. Join us again at 2:30, and thanks for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.